Someone says a hurtful word out loud, or almost in a whisper, sometimes mockingly, sometimes with icy indifference, and sometimes as if they don't even notice what they've done. And you hear it. Something inside you tightens sharply, echoing with pain, but outwardly you show no sign of a single movement. You remain silent. You smile. You change the subject as if nothing had happened. Time passes, a couple of hours, maybe a whole day, and it seems like you've long since moved on to other things, everything said and safely forgotten. But no, somewhere deep inside, that very word still resonates, and the quieter it becomes around you, the louder it echoes within you. You return to this phrase again and again, mentally putting yourself back in the same situation, thinking, maybe I shouldn't have kept quiet, or, conversely, maybe I was right not to respond? And that's where the main question arises. Is it necessary to forgive at all? If this question has ever kept you awake, watch this video to the end and subscribe to the channel right now. What follows is a conversation that will put many things into perspective. From childhood, we were taught to be good, to forgive, lest we be seen as vindictive, to condescend, lest we appear superior, to be gentle, lest we appear cruel. From an early age, we were taught that generosity is a sign of true strength, that forgiveness is beautiful, that offending is weak, and that forgiving is strong. But with age, this formula loses its persuasive power because one day you begin to clearly sense. Sometimes forgiveness truly brings peace, while other times it leaves a persistent feeling inside, as if you've just betrayed yourself, given up, failed to say stop, and allowed someone to enter where no one else should have gone. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a noble gesture at all, but tacit consent to further humiliation. And you can no longer honestly distinguish whether it was kindness or fear, maturity or simply an ingrained habit of being convenient for everyone. Stoicism doesn't forbid forgiveness, but it teaches us to take our time, not to confuse forgiveness with concession, and not to disguise ordinary weakness with beautiful words. It says, look closely at what's really behind your reaction, what exactly you're allowing, and most importantly, why. This is where the first, most honest look at the situation begins. An insult is never just a word. It's an attempt to invade your inner order. It's rarely truly accidental. Even if it's delivered as a harmless joke, even if it's thrown out seemingly in passing, a person almost always intuitively senses what they're doing. Because an insult isn't just a set of sounds. It's a form of power. It's a way to test how much you can tolerate, how far you can go before you finally stand up and say, enough. For a Stoic, every word is not a sound, but an action. A word thrown in your face as a test is never a trifle. It is a direct interference with your inner rhythm, your structure, your point of rest. And if you accept it silently, as something insignificant, you are destroying your system from within with your own hands. You are thereby saying, I can be neglected, I can be diminished. And no matter how much you convince yourself that you are simply being generous, that you are above such trifles, that it is not worth paying attention to, your body will still react. Somewhere inside, a shift will occur, small, almost imperceptible, but it will certainly happen because you have allowed a stranger to enter your inner space without permission. A Stoic doesn't allow this. He doesn't allow another's aggression to enter under the noble guise of virtue. He looks at the situation calmly, but with utmost precision. He asks himself honest questions. What was that? Why now? Why exactly like this? And what will happen if I say nothing at all? And if he sees that this is not an accident, but even a veiled but entirely deliberate attempt to destroy his boundaries, he does not forgive. Not because he is seeking revenge, but because he is defending his inner order, one that has been built over years through pain, effort, silence, and discipline. A Stoic understands perfectly well. If you allow an invasion once, it will inevitably happen again, and the next time it will be deeper, bolder, and harsher, because the offender always accurately gauges how much you're prepared to defend yourself. And if you remain silent for the sake of imaginary peace, what you get isn't peace at all, but slow destruction. Therefore, the first thing that is important to understand once and for all: an insult is not an offense, it's an invasion. And the response to it shouldn't be emotional, it should be structural. You don't have to respond to aggression with aggression, but you must block someone else's access to your very essence. A silent yet absolutely precise no. That is the first level of true strength. Not flashy, not ostentatious, but sufficient for the other person to understand. You can't come here. Because if you don't defend your inner space yourself, someone else inevitably will, and they are unlikely to act in your interests. There's one deeply unpleasant truth that those who sincerely pride themselves on their own generosity don't like to admit. People remember not so much what they said to you as what happened to them. If you remained silent, they remembered it. If you forgave, they took it into account. But not as an act of kindness, but as an open door, as your habit of enduring, as a vulnerable spot where you can strike again a little later. Subtly, more painfully, quietly. Human beings are designed in the most simple way. What goes unpunished inevitably repeats itself. The Stoic knows this firmly. He doesn't believe in the naive kindness of the world by default. He understands. Society educates not with words, but with consequences. And if you erase these consequences for the sake of preserving a fragile peace, you thereby teach the other person that your peace is simply worthless. You can be as kind, wise, and enlightened as you like, but if your generosity isn't backed by clear boundaries, you're quickly no longer taken seriously. You're respected not for what you forgive, but for clearly and unambiguously demonstrating where the permissible ends. By forgiving offenses without judgment, without pause, without internal analysis, you don't heal the situation, you perpetuate it. It's as if you're putting an official stamp on it. Yes, you can. Yes, repeat. And it's important to understand that this isn't about the other person. It's about you. You shape those around you by what you allow. And the more you allow, the less respect you have in the eyes of others. A Stoic doesn't crave others' respect, but neither does he give himself away in endless installments. He knows the world is a system of signals, and if the signal is weak, diffuse, or sluggish, it will inevitably be read as empty. But if you have a genuine structure within you, if you can remain silent not out of weakness but out of strength, you will be clearly felt even without a single word spoken. Forgiveness is not an obligation. It is a conscious choice. And a Stoic makes this choice not because it is accepted, but because he sees that here lies true repentance, a living connection, a genuine humanity. And if this is not the case, he does not forgive, does not stage a demonstrative scene, does not blame anyone, but simply quietly departs forever. He does not cultivate impunity in others. He cultivates an understanding of consequences, quietly, without moralizing, but with utmost clarity. And if you truly want to be respected, don't teach people that they can hurt you with impunity. Over the years, a person gradually learns to restrain themselves. They no longer rush to respond to every harsh retort. Don't get involved in every argument. Don't try to prove their case without fail. They choose silence not out of weakness, but out of a sense of inner discipline. They understand that not every battle is worthy of their personal presence. But it's precisely here that a subtle, almost invisible trap lurks. In this silence, it's easy to miss the moment when self-control imperceptibly turns into concession. A tacit agreement to something that, somewhere deep within, is being methodically destroyed. And if you don't recognize this transition in time, you can spend years enduring not because you're wise, but because you're simply afraid of ruining everything completely. Stoicism doesn't call for endless arguments, but it does call for utmost clarity. Being calm doesn't mean being infinitely accessible to everyone. Being patient doesn't mean being convenient. Being truly strong doesn't mean silently accepting absolutely everything. A Stoic knows how to maintain silence, but never uses it as a way to hide from reality. They know that silence must have a limit, otherwise it imperceptibly turns into weakness, skillfully disguised as strength. If you endure years of devaluation, neglect, and ridicule, you're not sending a signal to the world around you, you're sending it to yourself. You tell yourself, "I'll accept this," and your body remembers it all without fail. With each new experience, a small but cumulative residue remains inside you, until one day you get the distinct feeling that you've been living in the wrong place for a long time. True self-control isn't a habit of endless indifference. It's the ability to stop in time what's incompatible with your inner integrity. Say no, not with anger, not with resentment, but with genuine self-respect. Silently, if necessary, walk away, stop smiling at someone who's clearly crossed the line. And here an equally important question arises. If you do decide to forgive, to whom exactly are you handing this forgiveness over? The person hasn't admitted their guilt, hasn't asked for forgiveness, hasn't even understood what exactly they did wrong, and yet you forgive anyway. Why? To feel superior? To preserve the relationship at any cost? Or simply because you're afraid to admit that you were truly hurt and no one ever noticed? By the way, if you're familiar with this feeling, when you forgive too quickly and then carry a strange emptiness inside you for a long time, it's time to subscribe to the channel. There are many more such honest conversations about boundaries and inner dignity ahead. Sometimes a person forgives too quickly, too easily, almost reflexively. They tell themselves, I don't want to hold a grudge. I don't want to be vindictive. I'm just letting go. And on the outside, this certainly looks beautiful, calm, even truly wise. But inside, something still remains because somewhere deep inside, they know for sure. They weren't understood, they weren't noticed, they weren't acknowledged. They simply passed them by and moved on. And they're left alone with their generosity, which now feels less like strength and more like confusion. It's as if they've handed forgiveness to a place where no one ever asked for it, where no one ever said, I'm sorry, where no one ever said, I realize that. Stoicism doesn't forbid forgiveness, but it does teach that forgiveness is a gift that can only be bestowed upon those truly ready to receive it. And if you give it to someone who doesn't even feel guilty, you're not healing the situation. You're simply turning a blind eye, not to the other person, but to yourself. Someone who hasn't repented is simply incapable of appreciating your kindness. They'll see it only as a sign of weakness, as a silence in which everything is once again permitted. And it's you, with your own hands, who grant them this unspoken right, not out of malice, but out of a desire to remain good in their own eyes, out of fear of losing the relationship, out of simple fatigue from the constant stress. But in essence, this is a quiet, almost imperceptible betrayal of oneself. True forgiveness always requires dialogue, even without a single word spoken. It requires the other person to turn around for at least a second and honestly admit, I was wrong. Without this, your forgiveness becomes an empty, formal gesture, beautiful and noble in appearance, but inherently destructive to yourself. A Stoic doesn't harbor resentment. He knows how to let go, but he does so consciously. He doesn't blur the boundaries between himself and another person if that person isn't ready for a real encounter. He doesn't degrade his own sense of truth for the sake of maintaining a mere facade of calm. He firmly knows that silence without mutual understanding is emptiness, and forgiveness without genuine remorse is tacit consent to continue living in a distorted reality. If you forgive again and again without seeing the slightest change, without feeling respect, without experiencing true recognition, that's no longer mercy. It's a leak. It's something that slowly but surely weakens your soul, like water seeping through cracks in a foundation. Restraint is the hallmark of a truly strong person. But restraint that hides only the fear of losing someone's favor is not strength, but self-forgetfulness in the worst sense of the word. A Stoic knows, respect begins not with others' attitudes toward you, but with your own willingness to honestly define where the acceptable ends. Humiliation is rarely truly loud. It can sound quite calm, with a welcoming smile, wrapped in the guise of an innocent joke. Sometimes it hides in silence, in pointed disdain, in a single intonation. You feel it not with your mind, but with your body, through a sudden tension in your chest, through a keen desire to withdraw, to leave, to be anywhere but here. And in such moments, a person either pretends nothing happened or says to themselves, I will not allow this to happen again. The first reaction seems much simpler, but it is where it all begins, a gradual erasure of oneself, the surrender of one position after another, until one day you find yourself surrounded only by those who have long since become accustomed to your silence and use it as an unspoken permission. A Stoic doesn't demand respect. They simply don't stay where it doesn't exist. They don't argue, they don't blame, they don't try to prove their own worth. They simply leave because they know for a fact, if you have to constantly remind others that you're worthy of respect, then you've been in the wrong place for too long. People read your inner state not by your words, but by your reactions. Where you remain silent, where you swallow your resentment, where you stay by their side no matter what. And if you continue to stay, they draw a simple conclusion. Anything goes. But there comes a point when you suddenly feel more than just, I'm hurt. You feel, I don't want to be seen like this anymore, silently agreeing with what's destroying me. And it's at that moment that you truly recognize for the first time where your true boundaries lie. It's not the rudeness of others that determines them, but your own silence. An insult isn't just an external action. It's a moment of truth within yourself, when words are spoken or an action is taken, and everything within you freezes for a split second. And in that moment, what's important isn't what was said to you. What matters is what you do with it, how you accept it, on what level you react. Will you accept it as normal, or will you draw a clear line at it? This isn't a test for other people. It's a test exclusively for you. How much do you even sense your own boundaries? Or have you long been accustomed to living with them constantly being eroded? Have you endured for the sake of apparent silence, swallowed insults to preserve relationships, adjusted for the sake of peace? A Stoic doesn't run from conflict, but they also never seek it out. They simply know clearly. A boundary isn't something you draw with words. It's something you manifest through your own reaction. Sometimes that reaction is silence, sometimes a look, sometimes withdrawal. Form isn't the point. What matters is that it springs from the very depths, where you know with absolute certainty. Here it is, the limit. If you don't react to an insult because it simply doesn't touch you, that's true strength. But if you don't react because you're unsure whether you have the right to, that's a complete lack of boundaries. And in that moment, it's not you who strikes yourself, you open the door for someone else to strike. You can't be responsible for the behavior of others, but you are entirely responsible for what you're willing to allow. And how you react just once shapes the behavior of those around you for years to come. That's the whole point. Not them, you. There are times when forgiveness seems much easier. You can tell yourself, it's okay. Move past it. Pretend you're above it all, smile. Not for the other person's sake, but simply to make it all end. But behind this, more often than not, lies not maturity at all, but simple fatigue, an unwillingness to understand yourself, a fear of looking within and honestly seeing. At some point, you were openly neglected, and you silently accepted it. A Stoic never forgives automatically, for he understands the true value of inner order. The structure isn't built entirely from emotions alone. It's a profound clarity about what is and isn't permissible. And every forgiveness without compelling justification is an imperceptible weakening of this entire structure. Not a tragedy, not a catastrophe, but simply a small glitch in the system. But if too many such glitches accumulate, true chaos inevitably ensues. Forgiveness can be a genuine act of strength, but only when it's based on understanding, sincere repentance, and real change. If you forgive simply because you don't want to feel the weight of inner heaviness, you're simply sweeping the rubble under the rug. It doesn't disappear. It accumulates until eventually the whole house begins to crumble from within. Not forgiving doesn't mean harboring resentment. It means bringing complete order, looking honestly at the situation, and saying to yourself, this isn't mine. I don't accept it. Not because you're embittered, but because you respect the inner peace you've built over the years and are no longer prepared to allow anyone to disrupt it. A Stoic doesn't live by emotions alone. They live by a clear inner law. And if someone violates this law, they don't lash out in open aggression. They simply return responsibility for the action to where it came from and step aside, without a scene, without lengthy explanations, but with complete inner confidence. Internal order is always more important than momentary comfort on the outside. If you constantly forgive everything just to avoid tension, you're training yourself to live in chaos and calling it kindness. But kindness without a clear structure very quickly turns into helplessness. Silence without boundaries is hidden noise, and calm without clarity is inner chaos, carefully wrapped in a beautiful wrapper. When you're truly hurt, your first instinctive reaction is to retaliate, to stab back, to make them feel the same way, to prove something, to punish the offender. But all of this is playing on someone else's field, which means you've already been imperceptibly drawn into something that destroys you far more than it protects you. A Stoic lives differently. He doesn't allow others to drag him into this game of mutual blows. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't brandish righteous anger, he doesn't lecture. He simply excludes not the person as a person, but the behavior that is absolutely unacceptable to him. Sometimes even the very possibility of further contact. This isn't a show of power. This isn't a form of hidden revenge. It's a simple, honest thing. If something destructive creeps into your life, you must remove it. No shouting, no drama. No unnecessary internal drama. Simply remove it like cleaning up trash from the floor. Not because the person is bad in themselves, but because such behavior simply has no place around you. A Stoic doesn't take revenge because he doesn't dwell on the past. But he doesn't forget either. He draws conclusions, adjusts his distance, rebuilds his own path, and moves on as if nothing had happened, but without a single illusion and without the compelling need to be understood. Silent exclusion is the highest form of true boundary, for it lacks a shred of tension, only a calm resolution. It's not an act of ostentatious force, but a return to inner balance. And if someone still hasn't understood this, it's long since become none of your concern. No explanations work where a person fundamentally sees no fault. No conversations are simply needed where everything has long been crystal clear inside. Remaining in such a situation means betraying yourself. To exclude is to preserve yourself. And this isn't about coldness at all, it's about true maturity. Because sometimes the only way to preserve your own integrity is not to educate, not to fight, not to try to save the relationship, but simply to close the door. There's a line beyond which forgiveness ceases to be a virtue. It becomes a habit, an automatic reaction, an unconscious way to avoid conflict, discomfort, and rejection. People forgive absolutely everything not because they're truly great at heart, but because they've long since stopped considering themselves worth protecting. A Stoic doesn't dwell on old grievances, but neither does he completely surrender himself. He knows that if you forgive absolutely everything, you thereby train yourself to gradually disappear. You train your body, your heart, your will to ignore pain, to ignore intrusions, to ignore what has long and methodically been destroying you from within. Self-respect isn't just a catchy phrase for a beautiful monologue. It's a daily, conscious decision about what exactly you allow into your home, your space, your heart. And if you allow just anyone into it, including those who once destroyed you, you're sending a signal that this territory is unprotected. You can forgive absolutely everything in order to preserve the fragile peace. But in this world you yourself will no longer remain, because self-respect cannot grow on soil where everything is erased, where there is not a single solid boundary, where every pain is suppressed with the same phrase, "Oh well." The Stoic rejects that which destroys him, not out of pride but out of clarity. He understands that if today he swallows what contradicts his very essence, tomorrow he will wake up a completely different person. And this new person will no longer have a solid foundation, no center of his own. He holds no grudges. He simply firmly remembers who he is and what his inner order directly depends on. Because honor is not a pose for others. It is an entire system of coordinates. And if you betray it once, everything else inevitably loses its shape. You can forgive but not everything. Because if you forgive absolutely everything, you ultimately no longer stand firmly behind anything. And one day you suddenly catch yourself looking at your own reflection and can hardly believe it, because the one looking back at you from there is no longer truly you. Forgiveness is not always an unconditional good.